Let's solve LeetCode's contains duplicate problem. This problem asks us to write a function that, given an integer array nums, we must return true if a number appears at least twice in the array, and return false if every element is distinct. So we have a little bit of clues here. This at least twice is important. The return value already tells us that needs to be a Boolean. And here, if every element is distinct, and at least twice. Okay, let's review the examples. Here in the first one, we can clearly see that the expected output is true because 1 appears at the very beginning and at the last index of the array. That's exactly what the explanation says. Element 1 occurs at the indices 0 and 3. The example 2, the expected output is false since it happens exactly the opposite. All elements are distinct. And here in the example 3, we can see a really optimistic example because 1, all its occurrences are at the very beginning of the array. So with all this, we can already see a little bit of a pattern. We for sure will need to do a loop, but we'll be iterating over the whole array. Of course, forward, and we need to count. We need to count somehow the occurrences of each number. We could be thinking something like a hash map or directly an array, because we need to count for each number how many times has it appeared on the array. For example, one in this example has appeared twice, but the other elements have just appeared once. If we go for a normal loop, we could go, for example, index 0, which is 1. We could start it, for now we'll be thinking somehow that as a hash map. We'll first ask if the hash map contains 1. If it doesn't contain 1, we'll include it in the hash map and we'll add its count to 1. We'll start it from 1. We'll do the same for the 1 index, which is 2. It doesn't exist in the hash map, so we'll include it and we'll start out his count on 1 as well. The same for 3, doesn't exist on the hash map, so we'll add it up 1 as well. But when we get to the last element, in this case 1, we can see that it already exists and it has a count of 1. So we could just increment it, and here we'll have an answer. We could check if all the elements on the hash map are 1, then we will return false in this case, because all the elements are distinct, only happen once, each of them. But if we have an element that happens more than 1, we will need to return true. Well, that's the most understandable way, but you can do it even better. We'll clear this up. We'll still need a loop. We'll be iterating towards the end of it. But in this case, we'll be use some sort of array. And this array will be storing all the numbers. For example, we'll go index 0, 1. It doesn't exist in the array, then we'll add it up. We go 1, index 1, which is 2. It doesn't exist on the array, which is like the occurrences array. It doesn't exist, so we add it up. Then we go to index 2, which is 3. It doesn't exist in the occurrences array, so we add it up as well. When we get to the last element, which is 1, it does exist. It's kind of the same as the previous example, which was the hash map. But in this case, we're not saving the occurrences of each number because we only care that it appears at least twice. In fact, we're storing their appearances, and if they happen again, it means that they are not distinct, as we can see here. If they are not distinct, we should be returning true in this case. If all of them are distinct, we can return false. The problem with this approach is that arrays are not linear accessed. So in fact, to know if an element is in an array, we'll need to iterate over it in the worst scenario for the total length of the array. Because if the element itself is, for example, 3, we will need to iterate over the whole array until we find 3. And if 3 is at the end of the array, we'll have to iterate all the way. So this could potentially increase a lot because for each number, we'll need to go and review if it has already happened before, which is not optimal. For this, we can use data structure that is available in here in TypeScript. We're writing this problem in TypeScript, which is called a set. We'll clear this up a little bit. Well, let's just clear everything. Okay, we'll do the same. 1, 2, 3, and 1. In this case, we'll do the same, but we're going to save this in a set, which is some sort of array, but it has a constant O1 from accessing. It means that it doesn't need to iterate over its elements to find them. This is perfect because we will save them all here, as we've seen before. And when we get to the 1, we can directly go and find it. And if it exists, it exists. It means that it's not distinct. If it is not distinct, we need to return true. Given this explanation, we'll do the code for this. Okay, first we need to create the occurrences. Occurrences, appearances, whatever you want to call it, appearances. This is going to be a set. This set is going to contain numbers. We'll be iterating over the whole numbers, but if we iterate over the whole array and we didn't find any repeated element, it means that we need to return false. So we'll add it right away. Here in the middle of the code, we'll iterate over the nums array. For each num, we'll be asking if appearances, which is our set, has num. If it has num, it means that we have already found an element that appears at least twice, as the description implies. But this isn't all. We also need to add the element if we don't find it. If we find it, we just return true. But at the beginning, this set will be empty. As it is empty, we'll need to be populating it with our numbers. Here, when we don't find it, we'll add appearances, the current number. This code will only run if appearances doesn't have our number. And this is basically our code. Let's just fix this a little bit because I really hate, well, it's already in tabs. I don't know why it's not doing it. This is a lot of tab sizes. It was a bug on LeetCode. Okay, here we can run this and we'll see if it works. There it is, it works in the 3 cases. So let's review the code. Here we have this set that we call it, that we've been talking about. We'll draw it as an array, as a normal array. So the first time we go on to nums, num will be 1. Our set is empty. So this has num will return false. As it returns false, it will continue down here and we'll audit. After that, num now will be 2. It doesn't exist either in our set, so we'll add it again as a horrible 2. Now num will be 3, doesn't exist either, as you can see, so we'll add it. And when we get to the last one, which is 1 as well, it does already exist in the array. You can see it here in the first position. So we'll return true. And that's exactly what is happening. If the last element wasn't 1 in our case, imagine that is 4, it doesn't exist in an array, we add it, and we already finished iterating over nums. So we can just go directly to the return false statement. And that will be the worst case scenario. In that case, we'll be iterating over the whole array, as you can see. And we also will be saving it all. So for this problem, the time complexity will be O n, n being the length of the array. This is time. And for the space complexity, it will be as well O n, since we are storing the whole array in order to keep the occurrences of the numbers. This is of course the worst scenario, because if we head to the third example, we'll be iterating just 2 elements. But in the worst case scenario, which is this, we'll be iterating the whole array. He will be saving all the array and iterating over the whole array. And here we'll be just iterating 2 of them and saving 1 in this case of them. But as you can remember, the big O notation implies for the worst case scenario. So that's it for this solution video.